Foremost on my mind this week is the participation in the scenarios. Sent a couple of emails with some ways to invite people into it more. Scenarios have been actually I've loved my exploration of scenarios. There's a quality to it as I get into it more that's really clear about it's a matter of engagement. The magic of the scenarios has to do with our making it a group field. What do I mean by that? Well, the way the assignment is set up is to invite each person in to put your thoughts in the wikis. In other words, they all put them in the same place. And that starts linking each person and linking what you put in there. It becomes a fabric. Whereas if you just each did a little separate assignment and handed in, you came, oh, here's my little piece, here's my little piece. When we come together in the synchronous meeting, it's not the same. The cohort is divided inside in a subtle way. Whereas when each person starts to put looks like a big project. It is if you look at the whole, how do I get hold of this? But if you just take your reflections, we've had a lot of reflections now. There's a lot running through your consciousness and it's just right in the air. So you go look at the wiki and say, there's a piece here that is a probable future event that's in 10 years or 5 years. It's just one thought I have, let me just write it down. I don't have to write the whole thing down. See? It's not like we're making up a story, we're making a story. It's like we're making it as if we're telling a story of something that happened a certain way. It's like if you told a story about what happened in a small town in 1965, and the events that occurred and the things that came to bear, and somebody discovering oil in the town and the changes that made. See, it's like that kind of process, or an event that happened that was unfair to someone. See, it looks like a story that passed, because I said 1965. So let's say 2035. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far away, in 2035, this condition existed in the world that made certain things possible and limited other things. And we're moving forward into this. This is the time that will be, this will be the way it is for us. So in terms of our current situation, our current challenges, how would we meet them then? Or how did we meet them then? See? So there's a kind of weaving of a energy. And so by everybody checking in just a few minutes a day, 10 or 15 minutes a day, and putting a little piece in and reading the last person's piece. So it's a little different than the form, the way we've been doing it, but it's still like that, except we're all putting in the same fabric, in the same pot. It's a different kind of dialogue. It's more interwoven. And so by participating in the process, you begin to create an energy and a connection and a common dream. So that's the way this is set up to do. And so that's the invitation into it. And with a little nudging and a little coaching, see, more people are starting to participate. It's a big assignment, but it's not an overwhelming assignment. So, in my perspective, it's been going a bit slow. I'm concerned. And so I've looked at this and, well, what's going on here? Do people look at this and see it separate from you? See? we did a lot of work with it in the residency and explored it and looked at the aspects of it. And for me at the time, it seemed like, well, there's an ownership here. There's an excitement. There's an engagement. But then it just went like flat. Like, well, what's going on here? What's the deal? So I began to wonder, well, do people see this as separate from? They look at it something they're being made to do or have to do. See, and in that sense, yeah, it's separate. But what about your own life? What's your scenario for yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? What conditions are going to exist? What are the contingencies? So this is really a story about your own life. Your own life in the future. We say, what's in the context of Oxfam and what they're doing? Not really. Actually, symbolically, it's about you, and it's about your life, and it's about what's going to be in your future. So then I wonder also, is there an anxiety in anticipating your own future events, your own 10 years, 15 years? So what will conditions be in the world? What will our children be doing and needing at that time? See? So we're looking at an event in our own lives in the future. So when we say we're Oxfam, yes, we are. And though the context of the projects we were looking at in Oxfam may be staged in Africa, are those dynamics different? See? Well, maybe not really. So when you look at it from a perspective of yourself, this is not as separate from you. It's part of you. So I'm also then curious that is there a kind of againstness we have inside of ourselves where we're against our own possibility, we're against our own change, we're against our own liberation. What if are we against our own empowerment? Are we against our own involvement? Is there something about this project that we're hesitant to immerse ourselves in with each other and like take hold of the fabric of creation and begin to weave a picture, image, a story that represents this possible future and several different possible futures, and the power that gives us to already be ready to respond. So whatever occurs, whatever scenario, we're prepared then to make the best choice to shift whatever's present into a positive outcome, into a prosperous outcome. Well, if we're not prepared in our consciousness, if we're against our own future, we're going to get against this in the future. So we're going to get situations in which we can't respond because we've already built against this into it, you see. So whatever we do, whatever we change, whatever we want to do with this, our relationship to ourself is foremost. So another way to look at this is your relationship to the scenarios, your relationship to yourself. So we look at ourselves. What is my relationship to myself? How do I care about myself? How do I want to prepare myself? How do I want to come and be with myself? And is that present now? It's, what's the scenario for tomorrow? See, what's going to be present for the different scenarios tomorrow? See? And you say, well, if it happens this way, I'll be disappointed. Or you say, well, if it happens this way, I'll have this opportunity. If it happens this way, I'll have this opportunity. If it happens that way, I'll have this opportunity. See, so is there really a worst case scenario? The best case scenario? Any scenario, when we're ready inside of ourselves, becomes an opportunity. So how do you relate to yourself in a way? So The scenario is about you. How do I build my internal scenario? And then how do I context that in my relationship to the cohort to begin to get a creative response so that I can know more about myself through the way I reflect myself through the other members of the cohort. So we're each reflecting back to each other with our comments. Like you write a comment, somebody else says, well, what about this? And what about this? And as it does, we get introduced to more aspects of ourselves. So one way to look at the scenario project is a journey into self. It's that relationship that we develop through that process that becomes the dynamic of the scenario that makes it so powerful. I started out the videos this time with one by Gloria Steinem because she starts, with her history, she's evolved some very interesting insights. The one that comes to mind is she looks at all movements of liberation as really being the same one. And I agree with her that it all comes down to the key is if you look at the relationship, look at the condition or situation of women and the relationship to women in any situation or circumstance and how to change that relationship so that their life is improved, you will have the key to transforming that situation. So that's going to be key to our scenario planning, is that key, that perception, that it's like a rubric in a sense. It's like that measure, that way of that outcome. So one of the examples she gave was, well, in Nazi, and she related back to violence. In Nazi Germany, there were people who just took Jews in and didn't even think about it and protected them. And they were studied afterwards because people were curious about this. And what she relayed was that these people, they said, well, we didn't even think about it, we just did it. We were thinking about being heroes. And so when they looked at these people's history, the one thing they all had in common was there was no violence done to them in their childhood. Oh, interesting. There's something about violence and the dominance that is the same as what she talked about as the feminist movement. It's just called that. It's really about violence to nature, violence to women, violence to children. It's all a dominance, a control. Of course, she relates that back to, having children, creating, like in Germany, she continues to that example that just before the rise of the Nazi movement in Germany was extremely strong feminist movement, and that was the major focus of some of the suppression that went on as that movement arose. So anyway, it's a very interesting video in that sense, and she goes into some very interesting points. So when you're watching this, thinking, well, how is this, what she's saying, a metaphor for the whole issue of how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to each other. I saw a little wonderful cartoon. It was posted on my Facebook by somebody, and it had to do with, perhaps I should look it up to get the woman's thing clear, but it's a comparison of corporations or people, and women are people. They really talk about the rights of the corporation, but then they talk about how to create laws to control women, and so it's a fascinating concept.